Hey, how you doing? Bob Folks here for the Gilly Glue. How's things going? Happy New Year and all that good stuff. Here we are in 2020, and we're going to talk a little bit about Christmas bird counts. We're going to talk a little bit about some other nature things, and then we're going to talk about the migratory patterns and stuff of the eastern bluebirds, because we've got some sort of significant things that are kind of happening in the area, so it makes it kind of interesting. But first, we're just kind of listening to a little bit of the American goldfinch singing here. And who doesn't like the American goldfinch? There's Mom and Dad right there. Nice little carving by a gentleman that does some carving for us here in the store. Anyway, gotta like it. Hey, here we go. We better turn these guys down here a little bit. So no, one of the things I kind of wanted to get started with right off the giddy up was, I don't know if any of you guys that are associated with our Facebook page, you may have noticed that I've posted a video of a friend of mine, Jen, the Wild Yam. You've seen her on here on the channel before. We've done videos together. I've been on her channel before, and we've done some stuff together. But she had a very kind of a timely video, even though it was the new year 2020 happening, but the significance of some of the devastation and stuff that's happened in Australia with the wildfires and the brush fires that have been happening there, and how we can be maybe taking steps ourselves, even the minuscule little steps on how we can help nature. And I think you've all heard me kind of talk about that before, that, you know, the conservation efforts, the habitat creation efforts, and all the different things that we can do to kind of help out. And that takes me into the citizen science thing of the Christmas bird counts that happen here in Eastern Ontario. 4 or 5 different ones throughout the region, into the Western Quebec, and down in Kingston, down in Belleville areas and stuff. They have some bird counts and stuff too, but we have 4 significant ones that happen here. This year, you know, still following some trends, some scarcity of birds. We talked about it a little bit in terms of the availability of native food or natural food this year, with the seed crop, the berry crop, and the cone crop being so prolific. You know, wild berries and crab apples and stuff out in the forest, and even in behind my house where we have some wild grasses and that kind of stuff. The goldfinches and the juncos and everybody are in that wild patch, just eating like crazy because there's so many seeds and things. So I think that's having an effect on feeder visits, because people are talking about the feeder visits aren't so great, because there's a lot of natural food, native foods that they can access. And so some of the things that through the bird counts, the numbers were down, particularly in areas where people were counting at feeders and things. There were some other significant sightings of, you know, there's lots of snowies, there's lots of, seems to be northern hawk owls around this year. There seems to be a lot of those around this time of year as we're into January here of 2020. But the real thing that is kind of up is this eastern bluebird. So there's a really nice picture of the male eastern bluebird. We've talked about it before on some previous videos, but what's happened this year is that we still have a fair number of birds in the area. Now, anybody that lives here in Eastern Ontario knows that how mild it's been this year. All throughout into the middle of January, we've really had no cold weather, and we've really had no amount of snow. So a lot of this high volume of food availability, as well as some mild temperatures, has made it so that the eastern bluebirds are hanging around a little bit more again. But the significant difference in some studies have been showing is that this bird, the uniqueness of this bird in itself to start with, is the fact that it's throughout sort of North America, up into a ridge in Canada, and I'll show you that here, of where so where that pinkish is, there is sort of their upper range, and then the rest of their range you can see is quite prolific all the way down through into Florida and down into Mexico and things. But the interesting thing is, in areas where they are year round and where they nest, they stay year round, so they don't migrate at all. Birds that migrate up into Canada have started to inch their way a little further. So global warming, climate change has allowed them to move a little further north into Canada. And then the other significant thing that's happening is that as they exit Canada and the upper US, and if the weather permits and the food availability is high, they only go as far as they're forced to go. So if it's not cold and there's food, they're staying here. So we have quite a number of birds still here in Eastern Ontario, a little bit further towards the southwest of where we are here. It's a little less wintry that way. There's absolutely no snow in the areas that you get going a little bit further west. So it's a very significant thing in the sense that climate change is moving them a little further north. Warm winter is allowing them to stay a little further north, and so people are seeing them sitting on fence posts and things and in and around their yard. And of course, like this picture here, what are they doing but eating berries and things that are very lush because of the lush growth that we have this year. So the cone crop is very high, the seed crop is very high, the berry crop is very high. It's one of those up years of the yield, and it's one of those up years in terms of the median temperature has not been cold at all. Like even today, I think it's like -2 or something Celsius, which isn't cold in the least. So a lot of our boxes that we make, the nesting boxes and stuff that we make, are fashioned, designed and made to work for the eastern bluebirds. So there was a lady posted on our one social media site the other day of a bluebird sitting on top of a nesting box that she has in her yard. Didn't go in the box, she said, but it was sitting on top of the box. So that's a really cool thing. Really, really cool thing that there's some positives that come out of climate change in a way, and that birds' historical ranges are continuing to change, and that's no different with the eastern bluebird. And so the fact that it's not being forced to go as far south as it normally would, because the weather is significant enough that it doesn't have to do that. So we're seeing them in some other areas too. So we're seeing bluebirds in and around the cities and things, although they don't often nest in the city because they like open meadows and stuff, so that they can have free terrain to fly over, so that they don't have to. They can just get their bugs and away they go across and sing their song as they're hunting and getting ready to feed their young. And there was a study done actually, 38%. I think was the number. 38% of birds that nest in a box come back to that same box the next year. So I know we've had people that have had our boxes that continue to get them in some areas that they didn't have, and they expand their colony. So that's really cool. And then one other thing that I just wanted to touch on in this mild weather is the bugs and things don't get eaten the same as they. Well, there's the bluebird right there. The bugs and things don't get killed off as readily. I'm going to tone him down a little bit, as they usually do when they freeze. So we're talking about ticks and some different things. But also, having just come through last fall with the November in the deer season here in Ontario, we're monitoring very significantly the Ministry of Natural Resources and all the stations that they have for monitoring the harvest of white-tailed deer. It's called chronic wasting disease, and it's transferred through saliva, and it's in 3 provinces in Canada, and most recently in Quebec. So any people out there that are feeding deer, it's a thing that is not promoted to feed deer for a bunch of different reasons, but that's not what we're here for, to talk about that right at the moment. What we're here for is, if you're feeding them on a platform, let's say on a piece of board or whatever, on a piece of play, make sure you really clean that very regularly. There's a lot of this chronic wasting disease that we have absolutely no medication for. There's nothing they can do about it. If the chronic wasting disease gets into our deer herd here in Eastern Ontario, there's absolutely nothing that they can do to stop it, and it's transferred through saliva, among other things, but it is transferred through saliva. So if we have a platform that deer are sharing, same as if a bird is sharing a fly-through feeder or other feeder areas, we have to make sure that we clean those very, very well with some bleach and things, so that doesn't happen, and so that we stall the transfer of that disease. So it's called chronic wasting disease, and it's a white-tailed deer in 3 provinces here in Canada, and we need to make sure that we clean the areas that if you're feeding deer. And we got to remember, even and I was talking to a gentleman not too long ago, even if you're feeding them just on the ground, don't feed in the same place all the time, particularly when it's this mild. Put some over there and then put some over there, and keep moving it around so that transfer of saliva doesn't happen. Anyway, just wanted to talk about those few things. As always, I appreciate you stopping by, and we certainly, any questions, comments, whatever, be sure to leave them there, and we'll answer them best we can. Have yourself a great day. Ooh. New toy. See ya.